Welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin with the CNN News 18 special investigation. And what we've been able to unearth is that despite multiple reminders and multiple exposes over the last 2-3 decades about what Pakistan is actually teaching its generation, the future generation in schools, there doesn't seem to be any change at all. What we have done is card through the Class 8 and Class 9 history books. We're focusing on Class 7 and Class 8 this evening, and we'll try and get you more in the course of the coming days here. But what we've seen is absolute propaganda, a distortion, and a clear theological divide. And what's being seeded in the minds of the students in Pakistan across their schools and across their provinces is hatred against Hindustan and also against Hindus. So much so, it is underlined that it's a distant dream that Hindus and Muslims can ever live together or cohabit. If this is going to be seeded in the minds of the students and the generations of the future, is there any expectation of peace, any expectation of amiability, any expectation of cohabitation and living together in an inclusive society or in an inclusive region, despite this country or formed out of religious divide in 1947? These are questions that remain. We will deep dive into what each and how the distortions are. And it's not just limited to India per se, even leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, parties like the Indian National Congress. There are clear perceptions which are driven as to this is who they are, this is what they are, and this is who they will be. Now, is that fair, ladies and gentlemen? And if you were to compare to the education you and me have had, and we are currently imparting to our students and to our children, the next generation, there is a stark contrast. We'll try and speak about that in detail, but let's try and get you the gist of what we've found and what we've unearthed. Vatsala Shrangi has done a lot of deep dive, and some of the parts that we've seen. Pakistan instills hate against India and Hindus via textbooks. So that's what we've seen. History textbooks taught across schools in Pakistan in classes 8 and 9 full of references that are anti-India as well as anti-Hindu. Father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, and the Indian National Congress, which was a major political standing that was present across pan-India against the British, portrayed in a negative manner. Sectarian is what they have been called. Representing only the Hindu majority is what they have been called. Emphasis on the fact that Muslims of India always wanted to be separated as a Muslim nation. The whole concept of Bharat as a unified nation with its diversity, religious, cultural, etc. was never there. Never does the book mention them as a part of one country that fought together for the cause of freedom from coloniality. Even their participation in the fight against the British is repeatedly labelled as Muslim nationalism. In every other chapter that talks about the birth of Pakistan, there is emphasis on the fact that Muslims of India always wanted to be separated as a Muslim nation. There are recurring references in textbooks that how Muslims are not being able to trust Hindus in their fight for rights. At every other point, the textbooks stress on Muslims being oppressed at the hands of the Hindu majority. Even post-partition problems in Pakistan, such as those of administration having poor resources, feeding refugees, and mass violence during migration, have been blamed entirely upon the Indian government, showing it in bad light. Let's bring you a few examples, ladies and gentlemen. Pakistan even berates the Congress Party, one of the oldest political outfits set up by A.O. Hume in the 1880s. The chapters in Class 8 and 9 history book call Mahatma Gandhi, who led India's fight for freedom, Swaraj, from British rule, just as a Hindu leader. The textbook goes on to accuse him of disregard of Muslims. In Class 8, the students are told that many Indians joined hands to demand for India's nationalism, purely Hindu in religion. Indian National Congress therefore became more a Hindu political party than a voice of the whole of India. Class 9, the chapter goes on to say the Congress ruled badly and the period was marked with political corruption and high-handedness of the party over the government. When speaking about the partition of Bengal, students are told that the annulment came as a setback. 1911 annulment came as a setback to Muslims, but the Muslims learned their lesson and also said that Congress, which claimed to be a national party, behaved like a sectarian Hindu organization when questioned of partition. Students are told that the partition of Bengal brought the realization to Muslims that they could not expect any fair play from the Hindu majority. It's not even the partition of Bengal, it's the revocation of the partition of Bengal. And therefore, to safeguard their interests, Muslim leaders drew up a plan to separate electorates for their community. Students are told that Gandhi's approach towards Hindu majority and disregard to Muslim rights, that was Gandhi's approach. And this thus created hatred, jealousy and narrow-mindedness. The students are also taught that the Congress government took steps to replace Urdu with Hindi and tried to introduce Vande Mataram as the official anthem. Pakistan also says that Vande Mataram had anti-Muslim background and provoked hatred against Muslims. This is all part of the Federal Textbook Board, Islamabad, and this is taught across the board and across multiple provinces. While talking about the Khilafat movement, that was to support the establishment of a caliphate that backed a Muslim Ummah in Turkey. That Khilafat movement, it again makes the same statement about Muslims not being able to trust Hindus. The students are told that Muslims had learnt an important lesson that they could neither trust Hindus nor the British, and that the Muslims needed to create unity among themselves, and hence the Khilafat movement was introduced for the welfare of Muslims. Khilafat had nothing to do with India. Khilafat did not mean to go against. Khilafat means Khalifa. It's a derivative of Khalifa or Caliph, and in Turkey. But this is what is taught in the Pakistani history books. The Khilafat movement in this respect brought the concept of nationhood for the Muslims of India. So a Muslim Rashtra or Muslim nation which would champion and be based on the tenets of Islam. That was what was being peddled, pushed across. In its anti-India syllabus, Pakistan has blamed India for partition and post-partition problems such as those of administration having poor resources, feeding and the mass violence during migration. They have all been blamed entirely upon the Indian government, showing it in a bad light. Upon partition, one of the chapters explaining the scenario in Pakistan says territory of the state of Pakistan was divided into two, West Pakistan and East Pakistan, and these were separated by thousands of miles of hostile Indian land. The students are told that partition was untimely and badly planned, and there was large-scale massacre of Muslims by Sikhs. Do you sense any distortion there? It goes on to talk about the problems faced by Pakistan, and it blames India largely for this. It says the Muslims of East Punjab were forced to leave their homes and migrate to Pakistan in large numbers. Vatsala Shrangi has written a detailed copy on News18.com. She is with us through the day, bringing us the details. Have a look.
From veiled references to Mahatma Gandhi, accusations, blame and claims of being Muslim nationalists, history textbooks taught across schools in Pakistan in classes 8 and 9 are full of content that is anti-India as well as anti-Hindu. Written and designed by educational experts of Pakistan, the textbooks taught to young minds present students a wrong and hostile picture of its neighbouring country from the very beginning. News18 has accessed Class 8 and 9 textbooks published by the National Book Foundation, Federal Textbook Board of Islamabad. Sample this. The chapter on the formation of Indian National Congress during the British era in the Class 8 history book reads, "Many Indians joined hands to demand for India's nationalism purely Hindu in religion. Indian National Congress therefore became more a Hindu political party than a voice of the whole India." The book introduces Mahatma Gandhi, who led India's fight for freedom from the British rule and who's revered across the world as for his commitment for non-violence, as just a Hindu leader. The textbook goes on to accuse him of disregard of Muslims.
Dr. Makrand Paranjpe, scholar and also professor at JNU and political commentator, joins us this evening. Vasik, writer and commentator with us. Kamar Chima, strategic and political analyst, also with us. Namaste and thank you very much for joining us in this edition of The Right Stand. Thank you very much. Vasik, let me ask you, would you want children in any country to be taught this? A theological divide and sowing seeds of hatred?
No, I wouldn't, and I think this is quite troubling to hear. And thank you for that investigation that's actually taken place to raise this as a concern. In my view, what this seems to demonstrate is state-sponsored anti-Bharat curriculum and resources being taught to impressionable minds as a way to indoctrinate them and radicalize them against a country that seems to be doing particularly well on the international stage, whereas Pakistan itself isn't doing too well. Right now, we know that Pakistan's GDP is almost 10 times less than Bharat, and there seems to be an envious element as a result of some of what's coming out of the classrooms and what's being taught in the classroom. And what we're going to see, if this isn't tackled at a state level, although it's arguable to say that the states are responsible for this, is that we're going to have multi-generations of young Pakistanis who are innocent going into a classroom and then coming out with radical thoughts like this and believing in a victimhood narrative. And this is quite troubling.
Kamar Chima, is this what you studied and learnt in your school? And do you agree with this kind of language and this kind of distortion?
Well, I didn't go through this kind of language or this kind of academic learning in my schools, but I agree with some of the content which you are sharing. But I have a question as well that, okay, Pakistani schools have been teaching all these things. But what happened in India? Council on Foreign Relations, Human Rights Watch, Forbes magazine, Stanford University, everybody is saying that the Muslims are getting marginalized in India. They are getting punished. Muslims have become persecuted minority in India. So the Indian schools are not giving such kind of a treatment to Muslims through the schools. So why Muslims are getting minority and getting punished in India? So there's a question that, okay, the schools in India, they are very good. The government is very nice. They are not imparting such kind of an education to the students in Indian schools. But why there is so much hatred and Muslims are being considered as a persecuted minority by the Forbes magazine, the Stanford University is coming that examining the marginalization of Muslims in India is necessary. Times magazine saying that India is heading for anti-Muslim genocide. Al Jazeera, everyone is saying.
So may I very humbly ask you something, sir? May I humbly ask you something? Are you always so confounded, so confused? Do you always have the penchant to go out of syllabus? Or do you do it only when you come on the right stand and with me? I'm just very curious about this, because the story right now, sir, tonight on this show is what the textbooks in Pakistani schools are teaching. So can you please elaborate and tell me, do you agree that Hindus are bad?
No. Why are Hindus bad?
So do you believe that Hindus cannot be trusted?
Why they can't be trusted? They can be trusted.
Okay.
Who told this?
So it's there in your textbook, sir.
The question is,
so is that all right?
The textbook.
So we are talking about the textbook.
Examples. I can give you 1,000 examples in India where the Muslims can't be trusted.
Please give me what is there on text as certified by the NCERT. Show me one textbook by the NCERT in our curriculum which talks about or sows seeds of hatred among the children of our schools. I am asking you, 8th standard, 9th standard history books are distorting facts and putting it out there. Are you okay with it? Right. I am asking you, are you okay with this?
Listen, first of all, I condemn anyone who is, if someone is castigating or berating someone on the basis of the religion, okay, he's a Hindu, he's a bad, he's a Christian, he's a bad. But I have a question.
My point is, it is happening across your schools, across Pakistan.
So
who's doing it?
The Indian schools don't taught hatred against Muslims, but why there is a hatred against Muslims in Indian society?
Kamar Chimaji, that's what I'm trying to say. You have been conditioned to think that in India, India, one community, one com hates the other. You've been conditioned because that's what you're being taught in your school, sir. It is okay. Tell me, please.
You didn't answer.
Do you know this? I'll come to you. I'll come to what you're asking also in just a bit. Tell me this. Who says this? Do you know who has said this? Islam and Hinduism are not religious. It's in a textbook. Islam and Hinduism are not religious in the strict sense of the word, but are in fact different and distinct social orders. And it is a dream that Hindus and Muslims can ever evolve a common nationality. You know,
well, I think. Listen, let me tell you, Pakistan and in Pakistan, the Muslims.
I am asking you, who has said this?
Listen, the Muslims didn't want to live in a united India. That's what we want.
I'm asking you. I'm exactly what I'm trying to tell you is, sir, this was said on the 23rd of March 1940 by Muhammad Ali Jinnah itself. Okay, and he said this in Lahore. Now, why me? ये जो नैरेटिव आपका है ना इतना फ्लैट हो गया सर कबा चीमा आज खुद आपका ट्वीट मैं देख के आ रहा हूं आपको दिख रहा है कि टोनी एल्बनीज इज प्लेइंग होली एंड आपको तकलीफ हो रही है भारत के सॉफ्ट पावर पे भारत में जावेद अख्तर भी होली खेल रहे हैं आनंद नरसिम्हन भी होली खेल रहा है टोनी एल्बनीज भी होली खेल रहे हैं सब खेल रहे हैं वहां लाहौर में कुछ बच्चे वहां होली खेल रहे थे उनको घेर के मारा गया यू प्लीज टेल मी कौन किसको कैसी तरबियत दे रहा है सर फैक्ट क्वेश्चन इज क्वाड इराड डेमोन्स्ट्रेंडम सर एक कॉन्सेप्ट है आप पीएचडी कर चुके हैं आई एम श्योर यू वुड हैव कम अक्रॉस दिस टर्म कॉल्ड क्यूईडी आई हैव जस्ट डेमोन्स्ट्रेटेड इट टू वेरी रिस्पेक्टफुली मकरंद परांज पे इन भारत नो लेट मी गो टू प्रोफेसर मकरंद परांज पे एंड लेट हिम आंसर यू इन इंडिया देयर इज हेट्रेड इन इंडिया मुस्लिम्स आर वेरी वेरी अनसेफ in India. Yes. No, wait a minute. Let Makaran. What are the Muslims and the people, citizens of India saying? In India, sir, Muslims are the second largest majority. In India, the total number of Muslims is far greater than Pakistan today. And in India, you have all the firqas of Islam, which is not there in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So what are you talking about? Sir, fact पे बात कीजिए ना, rhetoric पे नहीं. मैं fact पे बात कर रहा हूँ. 1 minute. Makaran Paraj पे जी.
I'm talking on fact. If you listen,
अब फिर मकरंद परांज को भी नहीं देंगे चांस उनको तो दे दीजिए.
If I might, sir, thank you, Mr. Cheema, thank you. I just want to say that this is a very old issue, Anand, and the book to go to is by Yvette Claire Rosser. It's a PhD dissertation from the University of Texas at Austin in 2003, and the book. Then she published sections of this. Rupa brought it out in 2004. And the PhD is called Curriculum as Destiny, Forging National Identity in India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. I suggest we all look at it and you see the hatred spewing factories that were Pakistani textbook creators. And even in Bangladesh, by the way, a little bit of that is there, especially when they talk about the liberation war and India's role. And just the opposite of it, to tell my friend Mr. Cheema, if you look at the instructions given to the NCERT history writers, medieval history writers, they are told not to talk about the bloodshed, the conquest, the demolition of temples, forcible conversion, enslavement, rape, and so forth of Hindus during the Islamic conquest. There's a specific diktat that this will create communal disharmony. Do not focus on these ugly and unsavory aspects of the Islamic conquest of India. This is a part of the instructions given to the NCERT textbooks, and you can read these textbooks, and how they actually, you might say, airbrush or whitewash some of these crimes and genocidal history, of what actually happened. I think students need to know we should not create hatred. I completely agree that students should be allowed to see history, or the facts of what had happened. And you can look at history after history. Look at Chachnama, the story of the conquest of Sindh, which, by the way, if you look at Pakistani textbooks, as I have looked at, the figures that are seen as heroes, are Muhammad bin Qasim, Muhammad Ghazni, Muhammad Ghori. The Aurangzeb is a very big hero, by the way. And Akbar is not very important if you look at the Pakistani histories, because Akbar started Din Ilahi. And just to give my friend from the other side some respect, I must say that similar tendencies are also visible in India today, by the way. They want to rewrite history in a very different manner. And we are also, to some extent, showing our own intolerance, by the way, which is also not a good thing. So I feel that in an open society such as India, which is very different from Pakistan, in fact, it was called, Nazariya-e-Pakistan. That is a certain viewpoint that was taught to students. And if you went against it, you could be held up, you could be criminalized, you could be actually branded.
If we were so vehement to change our history, Makarand Paranjpeji, then Nalanda, which burnt for a year and a half because all the knowledge was burnt by Bakhtiyar Khilji, would still not have the railway station named as Bakhtiyarpur. So the fact of the matter is that we still have embraced a history and allowed a lot of it to still remain there. So one is a commentary on what is the truth. In India, the argument is that our textbooks have been far, far economical and they've tried to airbrush a lot of the hard facts. There, it's an alternative truth altogether. It's far away from the reality. Kamar Chima and then Wasik. Yes, Kamar Chima.
Can I just come in for 1 second?
Ji, Makarand Paranjpe and then Kamar Chima. Yeah.
See, my real point to my friend Mr. Chima and other friends in Pakistan is that this narrative is harming Pakistan. We are not complaining as Indians. We are not saying, look what you're teaching your children to hate us. This is going to harm generations of Pakistanis. And fundamentally, what's happening to Pakistan today, including what happened during Ziaul Haq's time and then in Musharraf's time and the Islamization, in the end it has made Pakistan a failed state. So this sort of distortion of history and ignorance and hatred.
There are many in Pakistan who believe that the regional languages were compromised. Punjabi, Pashto, Sindhi are not spoken and Urdu was imposed. And it should not have been done because somewhere the cultural delinking happened. There is a culture which is there even in Pakistan which is part of this geography. There is a history which is there. Kamar Chima, is it not important to take cognizance? We can have our own political views, national views, etc. But there is a stage in life when you would want to get to that. Not when you are impressionable at 12, 13, 14. That's the point we are trying to make. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you on few facts that the curriculum in Pakistan at time was not, it should not have been taught to the Pakistani student. But I want to raise a question.
Ji.
There has always been the international community, the universities, the think tanks have been doing a research that the Muslims are being persecuted in India. The Indian schools and colleges didn't teach this, then why there is so much hatred in Indian society for the Muslims?
Sir, I have only one very humble...
Can this professor from JNU tell me, can the professor from JNU tell me that why the world is talking about the genocide of the Muslims in India?
You say yes, you want to come. You say yes, you want to come to... No, yes. No, one minute. Sir, I have only one request. Makarand Paranjpe respond.
Yeah, I think you're being misinformed. There is no genocide of Muslims in India. Please, this is a narrative that has been peddled. If you look at any government program, all rights are given equally to all citizens. Nobody asks what your religion is. There's no religion linked to your Aadhaar card. All the benefits are going to all the communities. Yes, I agree with you. There is a vote bank politics. So if you're going to consolidate Hindu votes, and just as Muslims do it in Muslim areas, there are no-go areas.
You will fully agree with me.
So please don't mix up the politics, where campaigning goes on the basis of communities.
The genocide against Muslims in India is politics.
It never happened. See, I'll tell you what, Kamar Chima, once he loses an argument, will always stop on this. Kamar Chima, I'm just asking you, who's being butchered in Balochistan? They are Muslims. Who's being butchered in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are Muslims. Whose shrines are being blown away are again Sufi and again Muslims. This is happening in Pakistan. Now, what is the percentage who are fleeing Pakistan and trying to come to India are Hindus. Who were stopped from playing Holi in Lahore were a group of Hindu Pakistanis, sir. Hindu Pakistanis were not allowed to play Holi. So, sir, to end on a friendly note, Wasik, day before was Holi and day before was also Shab-e Barat. How many incidences did we see in Bharat? The other aspect is Kamar Chima should be given. If he says yes, all three of us will work with the MEA to get him a special passport and a special visit to India, and we can only tell Kamar Chima, kuch din to guzariye Bharat mein. You may not go back to Pakistan. Wasik, final word, I'll wind up.
Yeah, I think just the fact that the idea that India is somehow persecuting Muslims to the extent of genocide just doesn't stand up to scrutiny. When you look at the population of Muslims, you don't see them migrating anywhere else. In fact, you see more people trying to come back into Bharat as a result of the equal opportunities and the equal way the law is being treated. And we had Shab Barat, we had Holi. You didn't see any clashes between Hindus and Muslims, and the fact is that I think the teachers have a really important role to play in Pakistan to prevent some of this material being taught and to really apply pressure against the government of Pakistan to really redo the curriculum and to work as a way of building bridges back between the two nations.
Very well put. And on that note, I have to wind up with the open invitation to Qamar Cheema कि कुछ दिन तो गुजारिए भारत में. मुझे लग रहा है आप वापस पाकिस्तान नहीं जाएंगे. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. I have to wind up quickly, moving on to a big exclusive coming in, ladies and gentlemen.